Hello and welcome to Plus Sports on Plus TV Africa. As it's Tuesday, I do have with me today Wale Agbede as we navigate all the sports stories from around the world. And as often as we like to do it, we start right here in Nigeria. Hello, Wale.
Good morning, Mukaya.
Welcome. Now, we're going to. I know a lot of people, life moves on, and there's a particular story I want us to revisit. Ukraine, war times. There's still a lot going on in Ukraine right now, and yet there's football still on the minds of fans. They still want to get back to a normal that they recognize. A new normal where there's no sports, where they're under the rule of an invading force, and they cannot celebrate their cultural identity through the sports that they love so much. How big an impact is all of this going to have in the long run for their sports in Ukraine?
Well, I think it'll have some effects because don't forget that, there are a lot of young people who have witnessed this war, who have witnessed a lot of destruction. And many of them, I think, will turn to sports. So the impact I have suggested, I think more than most, I think will be positive because sports we know has a very unifying effect, right? We've seen examples of other countries that have been at war that, sports has played a big role. For instance, we remember the epic picture of Didier Drogba kneeling down at the National Stadium in Côte d'Ivoire, pleading with the rebels to sheath their swords years ago. So I would assume that young kids who can go to school, who can travel to visit their friends for summer, they just need to get maybe two tires, two stones, and play
yes, at that level, obviously children are so resilient, and so they can find the refuge that they need in sports. But the organizational process, the infrastructure that has been built and lost over time, obviously in the long run it means allocation of resources that would be better used for hospitals that have been lost, schools that have been reduced to rubble. But sports is so vital. And going forward, how much of a healing process is that going to afford the Ukrainian people?
Yeah, so the thing with sports is, and I get your point, right, on how on a more larger scale as a society, how do they reintegrate sports into their day-to-day lives, right, on a professional level. I think that as important as, rebuilding the health infrastructure is going to be for the country of Ukraine, how they engage their people in sporting activities will also be very important. So the budget for it, I honestly don't know where it's going to come from right now, because let's not forget they're still at war, right? We don't know when it's going to end. But I think that sports is still going to play a very, very major positive role. Now, it might not be as organized as it was before the war. It might take a long time, right? But that healing that Ukraine is gonna need to have, sports will definitely have to play a big role in it.
Well, I do hope that all the sports administrations, organizations do rally around Ukraine when this war is over and help them get their sports infrastructures and facilities back on track. Now, I said we would start in Nigeria, but the Ukraine story just seemed like something that needed to be brought up as soon and as quickly as possible. But right here in Nigeria, the federal government has formed a 12-person committee to work on the successful production and second launch of the Sports Book of Record, with the goal of documenting athletes' accomplishments for posterity. While inaugurating the committee yesterday in his office in Abuja, the Honorable Minister of Youth and Sports Development, Mr. Sunday Dare, urged them to work tirelessly to ensure the production and launch of a one-stop shop document for the country's sportsmen and women, as well as their achievements both past and present. This, he explained, is to ensure that the athletes' sacrifices and patriotic zeal are written in gold and properly documented. Dare, who was represented by the ministry's permanent secretary, Alhaji Ismaila Abubakar, charged the committee with being proactive and approaching the assignment with the utmost responsibility and patriotism, as well as urging them to bring their wealth of experience to bear in ensuring the successful production and launch of the record book. According to him, the Sports Book of Record is a compendium that chronicles the achievements of Nigerian athletes over the years. It is anticipated that it will serve as a reference research material for athletes and the younger generation. Truth be told, this is something we should have had a long time ago. This is something that any nation, any country participating in sports, having a hall, its own version of a Hall of Fame of athletes is supposed to have, so that we can know in the future who did what records have been set, what records need to be broken. It's all well and good when these athletes go abroad and they go off to the World Championships, to the Olympics. Those records are automatically kept for them. But what about records right here in Nigeria? Records that it's not up to a foreign nation or a foreign organization to keep, but for us to take pride in. How big an impact is this going to have on our future ability to recognize the accomplishments of these athletes and their sacrifices?
Yeah, I think it's very important. More so even at the most basic level. I think that we need to pay more attention to how much records we keep as a people generally, even beyond sports. I'll give you a quick instance. I think it was in 2016 or 17. Same Toby Amuson, who was just on the screen just now.
Yes.
Who just broke the world record in the 100 meters women's hurdles. At the qualifiers for the World Athletics Championships in Nigeria, she ran what everybody thought was the race of her life. Everybody assumed that it was a sub 12 that she ran. By the way, the world record she set now is 12.12, even though she did 12.08, that wasn't counted. And at the end of the race, the one I'm talking about in Nigeria, she was looking around to know what time she had done. And we found out that, the umpire, the time, the person in charge of the time,
yes,
didn't start the time.
Well, sporting accomplishments are usually so momentary. It's hardly. It's like a snowflake.
Yeah.
You can't get another one. And why do you think that, or better yet, is it that up until now such things did not matter to us? The record keeping for future generations. Is it that it's not in our DNA and our culture for how we reflect upon the sports that we all love to watch and experience, but the record keeping, is it just not something we've up until now had an inclination towards keeping?
I just think that a lot of people, like you read, this is the second time they're launching the Sports Book of Record. I just think a lot of people haven't done their jobs. Because this is something that at the administrative level, they realize that it is important. They realize that we need to have records of achievements of our athletes, right? But the people who are supposed to get these things done, at the most basic level, I'll just give you an instance of a timekeeper who just needed to clink a clock.
Yes.
And he didn't. So when there's a continuous chain of, people like that who show unnecessary levels of ineptitude, it creates that culture of, that lackadaisical culture that is sort of synonymous with some of our institutions in this country. So generally, and I don't like to separate sports from the general society. I think that there are a lot of things that we can do better with, and definitely keeping records in sports is one of them.
I've spoken about the value that a lot of athletes abroad, the Michael Jordans, the Rafa Nadals, the legends of this individual sports, have been able to accrue capital with their fan base. Capital that those fan bases are willing to then henceforth spend on sports memorabilia, clothing, tennis shoes, basketballs, autographed basketballs, and other autographed items. Do you think that with us going in this direction, with us trying to take our record keeping more seriously, do you think we're moving closer on that path towards the recognition and continued admiration for these athletes going forward?
Well, maybe. I think it's way beyond that. There's a lot of attention to branding, a lot of attention to even just share quality, quality of the athletes, quality of the facilities, or even maybe the availability of the facilities, right? So I think there's going to be a whole lot more to be done. Is it a positive step? Yes, I agree it is. But for us to get to the stage where we build that level of fan loyalty that we so crave, that we see across the world from the world's top athletes, I think it's going to take a whole lot more.
All right. Manchester United last night did the unthinkable, something that I don't think even past stars were expected, not with their record since 2018 against Liverpool, not with how badly they lost the last two games against them. 9 goals aggregate conceded against Manchester United, against Liverpool last season. The last 2 games, the first 2 games of the season, started poorly, already 4-0 in their last game, and yet Manchester United went on, produced an utterly unexpected 2-1 victory over rivals Liverpool in the Premier League at Old Trafford on Monday, August 22nd, to turn fan protests against the club's owners into a rare night of celebration. United's vastly improved performance for their first points of the campaign, thanks to goals from Jadon Sancho and Marcus Rashford, left Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool without a victory from their opening 3 games and with just 2 points. It was the first win for United's Dutch manager Erik ten Hag, who was rewarded for his decision to leave Cristiano Ronaldo and club captain Harry Maguire on the bench. In the aftermath of last week's humiliating 4-0 loss at Brentford, it has been a week of major question marks over the club's owners. The Florida-based Glazer family and many fans marched to the ground in protest ahead of the kickoff call-in for them to sell the club. Sancho put the hosts ahead in the 16th minute, showing great composure as he collected a pullback from Anthony Elanga, left James Milner on his backside, and then slotted the ball into the bottom corner. A mistake by Jordan Henderson allowed substitute Anthony Martial to send Rashford clear, and the England forward kept his cool to slot past Alisson in the 53rd minute for his first league goal since January. Liverpool did, however, pull a goal back in the 81st minute when Fabio Carvalho's shot was parried by David De Gea, only for Mohamed Salah to react quickly and nod in the loose ball. Obviously, Liverpool, I want to delve into what this means for Liverpool, first of all. 3 games, only 2 points. It's perhaps not as... For Liverpool to lose to Manchester United at the Theatre of Dreams, in a good season, in a regular season where Manchester United is still the Manchester United we know and recognize, this is not that big a deal. Eventually, big teams lose to each other. But Liverpool now, how badly does this damage their attempts to go for the Premier League trophy at the end of the season. Even though Man City have dropped points, have dropped 2 points, but they are still on 7 points, and that's 5 points more than Liverpool have. How badly does this reflect on Liverpool?
Well, I think it does reflect badly on Liverpool, especially when you consider. I mean, like you said, I mean the rivalry is one of the oldest in English football. So when one of them wins, not really a big deal. But when maybe one of the worst United side in a decade, who have just been smashed by Brentford, 4-0, and lost at home to Brighton, when they beat Liverpool, then I think is way beyond just a rival beating another rival. It was a really tepid performance from Liverpool, and with the fine margins with which the league has been won and lost in the last 5-6 years, you would assume that. I mean, it's safe to assume that Liverpool are really, really playing with not being in the competition for the title.
Jurgen Klopp is obviously a meticulous manager. He's a rock and roll, aggressive football kind of manager. He wants to start quickly at the beginning of the game and wants to maintain the tempo all the way to the very end. But do you think the players took Man United for granted?
Well, maybe. It could have played into their minds that United have started really poorly. And unfortunately for them, United players came out really energetic. They seemed like they were hungry for goals. They seemed like, at the very least, they were hungry to perform. And so it was a match between the two sides that then produced, the team whom everybody assumed to be the underdog, eventually being the better side. Liverpool grew into the game towards the end of the first half. And then in the second half, when they were chasing the game, they seemed better. They were controlling the game, passed the ball better. But I think that United just ran a lot. They outsprinted Liverpool. They ran more kilometers than Liverpool, completed more tackles than Liverpool. And that's strange when you consider how Manchester United have been really, really poor.
True. It begs the question, where was all of this work ethic in the first 2 games? Now, obviously, there was a protest before the match about the Glazer family, fans wanting them to sell the club, walk away from the club. Fans would be okay with them just pulling up sticks and leaving the club for anyone to pick up. But how big an impact, or how much do you think this win cools down temperatures that are currently boiling over?
Well, I mean, it's the first step. More victories would mean less noise from the fans. On a personal note, I honestly think that the attacks and criticism are misdirected. I think that the players have to show their lot of responsibility.
True.
I mean, yesterday, all they had to do was apply themselves.
And they did.
They ran more, tackled more, attacked more, sprinted more, were first to 50-50 balls, and they won. The Glazers didn't have to come to the pitch, and they didn't have to sell the club. So I'm not saying the Glazers don't have their own inadequacies, but if the players continue to win on the pitch, then we'll hear less of them.
Well, they have just bought Casemiro from Real Madrid, and there's still talk about them bringing in new players. And the fact is, a lot of players played very well yesterday. Tyrell Malacia.
The entire back line, in fact.
Played very, very well. So we'll see how well Manchester United can get back on track come, let's say, the end of the transfer window with all of their businesses, as much of it as they can get done. Thank you for watching us on Plus Sports on Plus TV Africa. My guest, my partner, my friend, Wale Agbede was here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mikhail, for doing this with me on the show today. I'm really excited.
Now, as always, I say to you, life is never boring with some sports. My name is Mikhail Tinubu. Do have a wonderful day.